Morning. Everybody okay? Can you hear me okay? Cool. As you can see on the slides, they made our session 75 minutes long. We're still not sure if we're going to fit the content in then, so just sit here till lunchtime. Joke, it's fine. So, who are we? Well, my colleague here, James Risdale. If you've met him, you've generally walked away from a conversation smiling. You've generally had a laugh. He's a great guy to work with, a very caring guy, and he understands business. And it makes it an extremely easy colleague to work with, and he just points me in a direction, and we seem to be doing okay.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
There we go. No, does he need any introduction, seriously? This is Mr. Ben Toms, also known as the Mac Mule. Have you noticed his hoodie? Has he mentioned it at all? Seriously, I'm like his carer. This is... I mean, Ben has done so much for the industry, and obviously the recognition is well and truly deserved, and it really is an absolute honour and pleasure to be working with him as well. Okay. So today, the agenda, we're going to go through our history, a bit about the company, how we started. We're also going to elaborate on how we work with Jamf Pro, how we integrate it into our business, and what the end result looks like. So when we take all of these things, we put it all together, and what is the result? Okay, our history. Are there any business owners in this room? Okay, this might resonate. So this is what happens, right? You start a business, you think of an idea, you do some research, you build that business plan, you get some finance, then you register your business, and you develop your service or product, and you take it to market. That wasn't exactly how it went for me, and this is more the reality. I took my idea to a company. I got hired. I did lots of research, about a year actually. I built a business plan. I got told I had a secure future with the company. I spent the last of my savings doing up my home with my 6-month child and my wife. Then I got made redundant. I felt into mild meltdown and panic. I said this wasn't in the plan. I cried. Feared I was going to lose absolutely everything. Cried some more. Suffered some sleepless nights and, inevitably, mild depression. But then I thought, I can do this. But hang on a minute, I've only got £1.86 left in my bank. So I asked my dad for a loan. I bought a laptop, panicked some more, registered my business, started developing the product or service, and I didn't give up. So here we are, 6 years on, 10 strong, and moving forward into 2020, we're looking to expand the team even more. We work as a very distributed team, so I think whereabouts are you on that map?
I'm the most northerly employee, and I'm 80 miles north of James, just outside of London. So, yeah, that's roughly where we are. We do try and spend as much face time as we can together, but this is roughly where we are.
Yeah. So that brings its own challenges to this as well, right? But I always looked at this business and said, how can we be that more modern company? So going to get offices and all the bits and pieces in the early days was just not viable. So this was the original paragraph that I started my business plan with way back in 2013. And this hasn't changed. It's a simple vision to provide a completely scalable and hosted managed service. This will provide organizations with cradle-to-grave lifecycle management of Apple devices. Our focus will be organizations who do not have the time or resources to support Apple technology or are new to the Apple platform. That still resonates now, and I wrote that in 2013. We do a lot of work with Jamf. I think going back, early relationships were, I think, with Blaine, when the Amsterdam office had about 5 people in it. Now it's absolutely vast, but we've grown with Jamf. We're also a Jamf Services partner. So we've got, 3 integrators? Yeah, 3 integrators. So we do a lot of work with Jamf in that space. We're also the UK's largest managed service provider for Jamf. We've seen exceptional growth since our inception. I remember building my cloud infrastructure originally in 2013 and taking on my first university, thinking, I hope this works. I haven't really tested this at full capacity, but it did work, and it grew, and it grew. We've got some nice product offerings now. The business is expanding very nicely, and we're now sort of maturing as we go. We work very closely with Okta, Code 42, and Malwarebytes. And yes, we do have our own Protect product. This is a coincidence, I will add.
It's a very good week to announce another product called Protect.
Yes. So datajar plus Jamf Pro equals datajar.mobi, our managed service platform. So this is a combination of various products and services that we package together, we build up, we integrate really tightly, and we deliver it to the customer as one entity. They get one invoice, they get one service. We extend Jamf Pro far beyond what it comes with out the box. So Ben has written our Autoupdate service, which we'll touch on later on. We've got our own applications, so DEM, Discover, Enroll, and Manage. So these are for iOS, so we can do, when we onboard a customer, we can do a full readiness assessment of their infrastructure just by entering a URL into an application. We've got Simplified Management, which is our administration stuff, which I'll show you later on, how we've extended, leveraged Jamf's APIs to give this framework. We've got our own content delivery network. We've got tools like Warden, which deal with those VPP installs. So if you're deploying GarageBand or Logic, Warden will detect that VPP install, then go to our infrastructure and go and grab all the content automatically for the customers. So if you've got labs and machines, it makes all that stuff really, really simple. And we've got our own appliances, which we provide to customers as CIS-hardened images, and they replicate with our cloud infrastructure. Over to you, Ben.
Cool. Thanks, James. So that's the business, that's the external customer side thing that we'd see, and obviously if we're doing demos, they're the types of conversations we'd have with people. But we're very aware, we're in a room of fellow Jamf admins. So let's look at how we work with Jamf and what we do here. Like James said, datajar.mobi is our core product, but the heart of that is Jamf. Now, with the customers we work with, we've got 55% of our customer base is education. The rest of it is any other vertical. We've got government agencies, farmers, fintechs, anything across. So we get to deal with loads of different folks. But when it comes to this, obviously, we can't just have one Jamf instance. So in the room, who has more than 5 Jamf instances that they manage? But completely separate, not prod and test, but completely separate environments. Cool, okay. More than 50? Okay. More than 100? Right, okay. More than 300. Yeah. So we actually have over 100 Jamf deployments that we manage, and we completely self-host. So that's not a small task, and you speak to any the sales or colleagues at the back there around this and these challenges we face. And you folks probably have a couple of instances yourselves. So we'll talk to you about how we do this. So we're going to look at Jamf Pro itself, deployment, provisioning, configuration, administration, maintenance, all around Jamf Pro itself, and then we'll move on to the next section, which is basically putting it together and what the customer sees again. So deployment. So your basic Jamf deployment. You have your MySQL, you have your Java, you have your Tomcat, and you have your Jamf web app. And you have that sitting on an OS, which is the white box in there, which is great. And that's a nice one-to-one model for a single Jamf deployment. Obviously, you can split off the database, etc., as you need, but this is your generic, very much your simplest Jamf deployment. When it comes to a multi-context or multi-tenancy, what you would tend to do as a typical method is, what's called is multi-context, where you would have the same setup, but use multiple root.wars from Jamf, the manual installers, and then these folks then share these resources across. So you have one instance of maybe MySQL, Java, Tomcat, etc., and that can scale okay, but then if Tomcat has an issue, it then takes down all of those Jamf contexts on that host. And that kind of was a challenge that we found there, and we struggled to scale that up. So what we did was we took the original model, the original blueprint of your simplest Jamf install. I mean, I'm talking about those of us that can remember the days when Jamf just came as a package that you would install on an only supported Mac OS server, or Mac OS X server, sorry. Going back to the days when it had green at the top. But that model still works in the simple build. We are using Kubernetes to host our Jamf deployments, and we have a MySQL pod and a JSS pod. But it's very much, you can see that's very much the blueprint, and again, it takes from that same basic guidelines of what we were doing foundation at the beginning. And this comes back to one of our guiding principles of what we do organizationally, and it's keep it simple, make it scale. We could have done loads more madness with this, we could have done loads of stuff, but this works. So why? And oh, by the way, there's a GitHub link that's going to be coming out at the end of the talk here, which has links to Docker files and lots of these sections as well. So you get to see some of the nitty-gritty stuff. So we have these deployments spun up, ready for a customer. How do we then configure them? What do we then do next? Well, we have a checklist, right? Nothing overly technical, We use IT Glue as a documentation portal, and we have checklist items of things that we need to do. So there's things that we do outside of Jamf. There's things that we're creating like APNS accounts, things like that we need to do. But as a team, you've seen that we're globally distributed, and we need to make sure that we follow the same way of working. So with this all links out to documentation. And we don't all have a Rich Troughton. We don't all have someone who can write tomes of documentation. But sometimes all you need is a screenshot, because we need to make sure we have that consistency across a team. Some of these things might be available from the API now. Some of them aren't. But literally, you can no point making it overly technical. If you have someone resourced to do this, just have them click the buttons and add the stuff that we need. Mentioned around the APNS accounts, obviously managed Apple IDs when we work with customers with ABM, ASM as well. You want them to be secure, so you want to enable two-step verification. That doesn't scale again if you've got a geographically split team. I don't want my mobile to have a 2FA code and I'm here. My team can't then not respond to that customer request. So another type of thing that we would do there is we would have a Twilio account, a virtual number, and we would have the messages sent to Twilio, and then they get sent to Slack. So we've got a Slack channel. So again, as a team, we can get those two-step verification codes. When it comes to most of the configuration in Jamf, we do just use Jamf Migrator. So we have API pulling in the settings we need, and then we go configure. So the foundational configuration of every datajar.mobi customer is the same, and then we configure it differently as per their requirements. But we follow our way of working. And this stuff here, the reason we're telling you this is like, there's nothing up our sleeves, we're not doing anything overly crazy, and it's to kind of give you folks some validity around the workflows that you're doing, and maybe make you more comfortable in some of the stuff that you're doing. You don't need to overly complicate it. The simple stuff works, and it can scale. I said configuration. Like I say, the initial deployment is very much from the same model, and then we have to configure it and amend that as we need. It's 2019. Our customers should all be on the deployment programs. And I think most of the people in the room are. And obviously, bearing in mind, if you're on the old VPP portal, hopefully you're not. But 1st of December, that's going, so you need to migrate to these new programs as well. But when we have customer engagements, we start talking with customers, we look at the onboarding process, it's very much forefront is, are you on these programs? You need to be on these programs. So again, that's a way of onboarding, provisioning, DEP, VPP, etc. And then James mentioned earlier, Autoupdate workflow. Jamjar, which I know some of you folks are using, and this is our way of updating software for our customers that isn't available in the App Store.
Can I just get sorry, is anyone here using Jamjar in the room? Okay, cool.
We'll give you an overview of that as a concept. So it's auto package feeds a monkey repo. So auto package is the code signature verification, does the virus total checks, all that good stuff. These are things you don't do if you're curling down packages to install on endpoints. These are things that you tend to not do, even if you downloaded the media yourself. Do you actually going to go through and manually code signature verify it? How do you know that you didn't download media that had some malware in there? We saw that with things like Transmission and CurRanger, where they swapped out the DMG that was available on the web server. And as we've got a service here, we didn't feel comfortable with doing either of those. So that's why auto package, code signature verification, virus total checking. So like I said, that imports to our monkey repo. And then on the devices we manage, Jamf installs Monkey. and a configuration profile to configure Monkey. We then install our Jamjar post-flight and a configuration profile to manage that. And then we're ready to go. And essentially, we have a script in Jamf that tells Monkey, in this instance, to install Chrome. Then Monkey does what it's good at. We're using the server-side smarts of Jamf and the client-side smarts of Monkey. When the apps are then installed, it gets removed from the local manifest, and the recon then happens so that Jamf knows that Chrome's now installed in the machine. So we do that not only just for the security thing, but also look at scaling this and running with this. If the new version of Chrome came out, I am not going across 100 Jamf deployments to update the version of Chrome in a smart group. That's maddening. So instead, we would use what we saw there with Jamjar or Autoupdate framework. We'd say all managed once a week, run that process. So all managed once a week, check for the latest version of Chrome. And we know it's secure, and we know we've got all those client-side smarts there. Which means that we don't have to return to this unless the customer wants more software. You can just leave that running as it is. And again, it scales. And it's a standardized way of working.
And it makes it faster to provision these instances as well.
Yeah. When it comes to that, we've got a few little projects we're releasing this week. This one here is Monkey Catalog Browser. Basically, we've got over 400 titles that we offer people through that framework. And if a customer says, oh, do you have X, or what do you have, or I have these lists, we can easily run Monkey Catalog Browser on a machine that has Monkey. It'll give you a list of all the apps that you've got within your catalogs. You can search for them, and you can do a CSV export as well. So you can give that back to your colleagues. Maybe your InfoSec team wants to know what you've got in your repos, that type of thing. And it should work with multiple catalogs as well. But again, it's just keeping it simple. We're using the tools that are available to us. We're using Monkey and just reading the local files and just giving us a nice way to say, do you know what? This is what we have. When it comes to deploying packages in the initial instance, though, as well, as much as we like to use the automation, generally the first time we see a package from a vendor, we put it through tools like Suspicious Package or Pacifist. This is where you would pull the package apart. You get to see what the scripts are doing. And there are some very horrible scripts out there. Some packages, you open them up and they say, oh yeah, they're going to run 700 scripts. Really? What? Just being mindful of what those are going to do and what they're doing and how they're going to impact the customer environment. When it comes to packaging software, we've seen the Jamjar environment. If it's not available through there, if it's not something that we could publicly download, then we would look at packaging it up as we need. We have our own packaging tool called Package Creator. If there's files that we're deploying onto a system, like a simple script here or something that we like to deploy locally, we tend to use packages because those files are actually much more transferable across the team. And then, of course, Composer. I mean, no snapshots. Obviously, nobody is doing snapshot installs, right? We shouldn't be. But Composer still has a point. It still has a way of working as well. And when it comes to configuring the endpoints and setting the settings on the client machines, again, our way of working and the way that we look at things, MDM first. Can we use a config profile to set that? If we can't, let's raise a feedback with Apple on that and then look at scripting it out afterwards. So that's the way we scale. And again, just having that defined way of working, especially if you folks want a split team, or even if someone sits next to you, just having these ways that you folks are doing and make sure it's clear that you're doing that amongst your team, it can really help you with this. When it comes to administering Jamf deployments, we said over 100 Jamf instances that we host. I do not remember the URLs. Oh yeah, I think I could be forgiven for that, you know. So what we do, we actually use self-service bookmarks. Any folks using self-service bookmarks for documentation and links and stuff? Or yeah, cool. So we have a self-service bookmark for every customer's Jamf deployment, datajar.mobi deployment. And what we then do, we run an app called, what we've called Jamf Switcher, which is on the marketplace, and again, it's on GitHub as well. That will read through that list of the bookmarks that are on your machine, present you with a list on your Mac, and then from there, you can Command-O to open up your favorite browser, or double-click, and it will open up the Jamf Pro Tools folder, and then you can write out the URLs you need. So simple efficiencies made. If anybody's looks at the lean methodology, where you have your pebbles, your big rocks, these are like 5-minute efficiencies that we're making on a daily basis that mean that we can actually lean out and give ourselves more time for other processes as well. So I said that's available on the marketplace. It's the only entry in the marketplace that has the word faff in it. I'm extremely proud of that I've managed to get that in as well. But it'd be good to see what you folks think of that as well. And standardization. I've probably said that enough times today already. You folks who work in teams, you need to have those conversations. Category names, nomenclatures around like package naming. We have templates for things that we use, and we are pretty regimented in the way that we do things. Just because if I'm jumping between one environment and another one, I might not have seen these environments for months, depending on the customer's the availability, help desk, if I'm help desk, projects, whatever. But I need to then be able to help that customer out within minutes. I can't then sit there and go through 20 pages of documentation or try and analyze everything they're doing. We have to work in a certain way. It's efficient for us and for the customer, and it makes it a much easier way of working as well. So how do we maintain all this? Well, transparency is key. So we're very clear with our clients, customers, when we're making changes, when we're having outages. We communicate that through. We have mailing lists. We have public status dashboards. Also, knowing when things expire. You know, APNS certs, VPP tokens, DEP tokens. For us, IT Glue has a lot of that information in there. But these are very simple things that you should be doing and should know, but they can really trip you up. I mean, I'm sure there's a few of us here that maybe have got very close to an APNS token expiring because of holidays or what have you, or just missing it. And yeah, if you've got a few DEP enrolled devices, that could have been a bad day if you'd have missed that. So you can imagine it where customers are paying for us for a service. If we call them up and say, hey, those 1,000 iPads you now need to wipe and re-enroll because we snoozed an alarm, it's not going to work. So now, with so many Jamf instances, we need to also have some alerting and be aware of what's happening. So what we do, we aggregate all of the logs into a cloud product called PaperTrail. If you've done any logging stuff with Jamf, like a log4j appender type of thing, you can point over there. With the log files ingested, we then use regex patterns, and we use them in two different ways. One is to dismiss it. You know, when the VPP license monitor ran in X seconds, I don't know about that. Yeah. But if, again, token expired, if someone's used a VPP token in another MDM, the LDAP connection's timed out. We need to know what's happening here. So in those instances with these alerts, the alerts then send to Datadog. Datadog is a monitoring product. And within there, you can set custom metrics. So if we have a timeout that happens for LDAP 6 times within an hour, the customer's probably got an issue. If it's once, maybe it's just a blip. So when they hit these thresholds, Datadog then logs a ticket on Zendesk. But it means we can be proactive here. It means that we know that this thing's happened, we can advise the customer and work with them, rather than them calling us up, and maybe they've got these devices in an unconfigured state, or it's impacted them. And this is kind of how we classify stuff a little bit. So the okay are the messages where Jamf is just being very chatty, you can kind of ignore them. The warning messages are ones that you maybe should look at, but it might not be a problem. The bomb are the ones that you need to look at because something is going to go bang, and then the bang is when it went bang. Now again, on the GitHub link, we have a repo with about 50 different log messages and what we've classified them as there. Pull requests, it's very much accepted here, but also we're not Jamf support, so this is our way of putting things, but don't take this verbatim and just follow the steps. Just if you think you've got an issue, speak to Jamf. But this is where we put stuff through. Some of that there, as you can see, the top 2 options there, very much you would know what happened there because your APNS certificate expired or your Jamf instance isn't coming up. You'd probably be pretty aware of what happened. The other option below there, the other one, for example, the organization has not accepted the latest terms and conditions for the program. So when Apple makes the changes within ASM and ABM requiring the terms and conditions to be updated, we're not necessarily the administrator on our customers' instances. So we end up with 100 tickets being logged through that process, but then the ticket's logged and we can speak to the customer and say, hey, you need to do this. This is the impact to your environment. And this all gets put together. All that stuff there generates a nice end result. When we talk about this, we're looking at things like the resources being used. And again, these are the things that hopefully you folks kind of a bit more applicable to yourselves. Our total RAM usage for the 30th of September 2018 to 30th of September 2019, our average RAM usage, sorry, was 480 gig of RAM. So that's between the MySQL and JSS pods per customer across that for that year. On average, we're averaging 4.41 gig of RAM per deployment. And you saw the graph, we're looking at over 30,000 devices, over 100 Jamf deployments. If we didn't work in the way that we do work, that usage would be a lot more. So there's efficiencies with things like Jamjar and not having to worry about the smart groups with the versioning and other ways in which we work really do have direct correlation to what we're using and the overall efficiencies within Jamf as well, making sure that we don't have Jamf instances use 32 gig of RAM just because we've misconfigured something or we've followed a bad process.
And I'll just add in there as well, excuse me, there's the commercial aspect to this as well. The less resources we're using, the more profitability that we have in the business.
Yeah, and on that as well, we don't use S3 or anything. We don't use Amazon. We have a platform as a service partner in the UK. They put in the physical tin, and then we manage the application layer. So this is completely all us. So we don't have any of those other resources available. So again, those costs are key as well. We look at our CDN. So this is over 100 Jamf distribution points, over 100 monkey repos. We are only using 395 gig of disk space because we are deduplication. We're deduplicating what we're doing. Essentially, any of you folks using Photoshop, your installer is the same as the installer that I can use, the same that anybody else can use. You just license it afterwards. So why do we have 100 copies of Photoshop? Don't need to, we just can have one. Again, keep it simple, make it scale. We have one package that we update. If that package did have some malware in there, we can track that back. We know what's happened. With our clients, we've automated that process. We have one package, we're using up one set of disk space. On that auto-update repo, the Jamf auto-update, we're talking about 120 gig of data. That's 440 odd apps as well within that. And it takes 45 minutes for us to upgrade 100 Jamf deployments. Just because you saw the pods there, we can just remove the JSS pod, restart that, and it just runs through. So by having these efficiencies, splitting the things off, lowering the resource usage, it means that we can be a lot quicker here. How many folks are on the beta programs? Jamf, cool. Release candidate programs? Okay. We are only the second company that's on the release candidate program. The second company that's not on Jamf Cloud, sorry. And that's because we can quickly reiterate, make those changes we want to the Jamf deployments and give feedback straight back to the release candidate team. And again, it's because of those simple efficiencies, but you saw the Jamf deployment, it is your basic Jamf deployment. I said, and I kind of said this a bit earlier, but 443 titles that we're going through the auto-update process. With VPP as well, we very rarely have to manually package stuff. And these 443 items, we've using Jamjar, which we rebadge for our customers auto-update, but using Jamjar, there's very little tech debt there. We don't have those curl scripts that you then have to change every time a vendor changes a thing, and we don't know those insecurities around that, but the fact that you could be man-in-the-middle and redirected. So we've got confidence with our customers that we're delivering a valid package from the vendor, and we know that we've got all those checks and measures in place. And it just means we can have more time to do a lot of the other madness.
As you can see, Ben's worked really, really, really hard, and the team, on making all of these things really efficient within the business. And for me, looking back into that, is ultimately any efficiencies we have means less staffing, less compute resource, but actually we're using everything to the best we can. Like I say, we've only got 10 staff. We're looking after 30,000 endpoints. So we bring all this together, and how can we make the efficiencies with our customers? So we've got some nice workflows that we'll show you today. So typically, this is an iOS device. We're just going to take it out of the box. So this is for shared, non-personalized carts. We're going to build this out a bit more, but the device comes in, and we remove all the cruft initially because we don't know what's happening. Our DEM application comes down, and they can pick whatever configuration they want to use, and that sets the configuration, and then the device is ready for use. From a onboarding of macOS, we have our own onboarding screens. We don't use Dep Notify or anything. Years ago, Ben made the decision to write our own. So we went off-piste, so to speak. But we've got an onboarding screen. The user can rename the computer to what they want, so they can set their own computer name. They can pick a configuration from a predefined list, which we scope out and we build the custom system. And then after that, it will go through the deployment process. And the advantage of this, it's the same deployment workflow if you were using traditional imaging or modern workflows like Apple Business Manager or School Manager.
The things with these, obviously, you folks can do similar Jamf setup, dep notify, etc. But the other thing with this is the same workflow we use if it's a school or if it's fintech, pharma, etc. So sometimes you can just take that back and go back to these simplified ways. You don't have to go, well, this department wants that and this department wants this and they want it more green. No. You can still give people a great service by taking it back a bit and just simplifying it and not tying yourselves up to knots. The other thing as well, you can see there's a strong branding across. We brand our service, and so that the customers then are comfortable because they get used to our product, they'll get used to our icon. And internally, you folks should be doing that as well. Brand your services, sell yourselves to your customers, your end users, and badge yourselves, and then they can be comfortable when your little logo appears. And it could be in a splash screen, it could be in a notification, it could be in a Jamf helper window. You guys can then bring that level of creating a product, creating an entity for yourselves, and that can really make people comfortable.
Yeah. So touching on the auto update again. What is the user experience on that? Because ultimately, this is the critical thing. Once all the titles, the customers pick which titles they want in their system. We can make them available in self-service, we can make them automatically install, or in this workflow here, you would have a very simple deployment. The user would pick the product they want to install, and obviously the workflow is applied here. They then log out on the machine.
But you can see the logos used throughout as well are the same. It's that consistent branding, that consistent experience.
So yeah, the machine installs the product, and then it's now available on the device. Now, what's clever here is we detect if it has been installed, then we constantly update it. So if they've gone and grabbed the product, we'll detect it's on the system, and then we'll patch it thereon. So we're not going to be doing that active patching straight away.
And you see there as well, we call that auto update for the customers. Jamjar is the fun GitHub repo name, but you want to, again, rebadge your services, sell yourselves. Auto update is a thing that they get that more than Jamjar. Jamjar, what's Jamjar? What's Jam got to do with Macs? What are you talking about? What's Monkey? What's Jamf? What? So yeah, auto update, that works.
And on that, it's knowing your audience as well. So bearing in mind, going back to our original business plan, our target market is customers that have not got a lot of experience with Apple or are new to it. So going in with big technical terms, it's just not going to work. So this is another example. So we have simplified management. So the aim of this is to really make administration of the Jamf environment very simple without giving them any direct access to the system. So this was all born really out of support requests. So we looked at the system, we were seeing how efficient we were from a service desk perspective. Obviously that has a cost, and we were looking at what we were charging, and we were like, actually, well, we can give some customers immediate access to do small tasks on the system. So these are non-destructive tasks.
And there's a methodology here, and I'm going to probably say the wrong one, and someone's going to correct me in a sec, but it's moving left? Shifting left. Has anybody heard of shifting left? Cool. It's that type of thing where you can take from the third line tasks and bring them down to the end user maybe. Empower them to do these things. We can do that through self-service, benefit of the consumerization of IT and turn it on its head. If this is a simple request, maybe get the user to do that. It doesn't have to be you folks doing that and generating into a ticket. And as well, I don't think I've mentioned that because we're an MSP, our customers don't have access to Jamf. They've not been jump-started. We are their Jamf admins. So we're the Jamf admins for over 100 organizations. And out of those 10 people in our organization, only 4.5 of us are actually technical. You've got marketing, operations and that. And the other half, it's a shared role. So he's between operations as well as technical. So we can split all this across. We can make sure our customers are doing things. We manage Jamf completely, but we know they want these features. And this is why we build this stuff out.
Yeah. So again, taking a bit more of a closer look at the app. So the end user can come in, as an example, say they've got an iPad in a school that they need to lock. They can go into the app, find the iPad, they can search by username, etc., etc. They can type in the message. And the MDM command is pushed to the device. And
this, no smoke and mirrors, everyone's got a Jamf API. That's what we're doing here. We're just leveraging that.
Again, using that Jamf as the engine behind it, so it is very, very scalable. So you look at the Mac side of things. So again, for those who don't have an iOS device to administer, they can go in, they can search, they can find the device they want to lock, they can put the message on there, and the same thing that would happen if you were to use the actual Jamf interface, but obviously we're just leveraging the API. They can change the configuration of the device, again from those predefined workflows. They can asset tag them, they can add notes if they need to, they can remove restrictions from the device temporarily while they need to do something on it. We can do bulk en masse selections of devices. We can change a group of devices from one configuration to another. So that's iOS and macOS. And you'll notice there, if they want to get a file vault request as well, they can put in their details. That goes straight off to our service desk. We have integrated that too into the app, so the ticket's automatically generated. And you'll also notice as well in here, we've gone for a traffic light system on the app. Because again, know your audience, okay? So the people that are going to be using this, again, it is, I think we refer to it as the curse of knowledge. We'll be talking to a customer. They have no idea what a pre-stage is. They have no idea. But we all understand red, amber, and green, right? It's a common defined thing. So we try and work really hard on the UI to make sure that when someone with no training is looking at this, they understand it. Red is bad, okay? There's a lot of red in that screen grab as well. Yep. So a bit of again, to show you what we can do with that. So we've given customers the ability to review device inventory, get information about their devices that they have in their system. They can view enrollment or supervise information. They can see storage information on a device. Perhaps why isn't macOS installed now? I can't update my computer. Go and check the device. There's no hard drive space. Okay. They can change the role or configuration on the device. They can add notes. So it could be, this machine crashed on this day. They add that note in the app. We see it our side when we go and check that device. They can then raise a ticket through the app saying, can you have a look at this? This machine crashed on this date and time. Okay, fine. We now know. We haven't got to keep going back and forward with the customer.
And we grab logs when they submit tickets as well. A few years ago, maybe in JNUC 2013, Andrina Kelly gave a talk about self-service and that type of thing where a user would log a request and they would generate the logs, the sysdiagnose logs, etc., and then submit that into a ticketing system. It's the same type of thing. But it means that, again, the user is helping you help them.
So again, we can push out those, we can make those MDM commands available, and the more stuff that Jamf add to the product, we get more and more functionality on these, and like enable Apple Remote Desktop and all these other bits and pieces. It's trying to, we review what actually is needed to be given to the customer, but again, it's trying to make sure that if we put software update in there as an example, we probably wouldn't do that, because that could be a destructive change in their environment, and again, they could break something. So things like wiping devices, everything else has to go through our service desk, because we audit that as well. We don't want someone highlighting 30 devices and hitting wipe. That would be a very bad idea. Again, bulk config changes. We can make users admins or non-admins just from the app, but building out and crafting those Jamf workflows behind the scenes to have that process there. So, I mean, that works incredibly well. And again, for those orgs that do need and are persistent with putting stickers on devices, we give the ability for them to be asset tagged. Just recently on the latest version, we can now, customers can now assign devices to a pre-stage, because that is a non-destructive change. So all they're doing is assigning a device from maybe a shared workflow to a one-to-one workflow, as an example.
So here's the GitHub repo. I was mentioning it's got loads of different links to different resources, our Docker files for our Kubernetes deployments, which is also a link to Jamf's Kubernetes manifest, which is a bit more fleshed out. Other things that we've mentioned in there, some of the open source projects we've released. The idea of this today was to show you how we approach things, what we do, but the fact that under the hood we're doing the same things, we've got the same things available as what you folks do. Maybe we just rebadge it a bit. We probably use a bit more pink than you, maybe, but generally we can do the same things. And it's just the way that we take what is available to us and how we approach that, and maybe giving you folks some confidence about some plans that you had to do something. Maybe you dismissed something because you thought it was too simple. I mean, having a checklist to deploy Jamf, it's really simple and it works. And sometimes just don't overcomplicate it. So I hope that's been of use to yourselves. Any questions?
No, no, wow.
Is this a good silence, or, I mean, you awake?
I think it's more of an awkward silence.
Oh, yeah, no
Oh, here he
questions,
is.
no questions,
No,
right? It's just,
no.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
You guys have built a lot of in-house tools to kind of manage these kind of things, that always feels daunting to me. Maybe because I write shell scripts and not macOS apps or iOS apps, which you have built beautiful examples of. Did you guys contract that? Did you do it in-house? What was the learning process for you guys as part of that you can share?
Well, foundationally, when I joined Datajar, there's a lot of stuff that James was doing, and it was just me, James, and Mark at the time, and it was a lot of bash scripts and stuff. And then, AutoCast MBI, AutoImage MBI, those things where I've written some apps, and I was grabbing some of that mentality to then try and streamline some of these workflows. The macOS progress screen that we've got is an AppleScript Objective-C app, as an example. But it's still those foundational problems or the things that we set up. James did the self-service bookmarks before I wrote the Switcher app. And I wrote that originally in AppleScript, and it took a minute or two to go through. Then, luckily enough, we had a colleague join us, Richard Mallion, and he is an Apple Master Trainer and a Swift developer. So we seem to keep one-upping ourselves. So James had the bookmarks in, like, that's great, but why don't we do this with it? Then I write it in AppleScript, and then Richard goes, hold my beer. And suddenly it's in Swift, and it's much quicker. It's like I think we're just geeking out and enjoying it. So it's all in-house. But the other thing with that as well, we've tried working with some external developers. These are all admin tools to help admins. Well, you need to dog food it as well. So it's very difficult for us to advise on things with external companies.
Yeah.
Why does Jamf do that? I was like, well, Jamf does. But why?
Right.
But we can't stop that. It's a vended product.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all in-house, all our own madness, geeking out and enjoying what we do.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
And on that as well, actually, we are planning to release more and more tools as we go. The interesting challenge we have is if we release the tools as we use them a lot of the time, all we're going to do is give our competitors all of our stuff. And really, it's got to be us, the fellow Jamf admins, not the fellow MSPs. We need to kind of help you folks out, really. So we are hoping to do more and more. There is a lot more crazy stuff happening. A lot more pink will appear on the marketplace, hopefully. That's what I'm saying. Maybe some more faff. I don't know. We'll have to see.
There's never enough pink. Any other questions?
Yep. Uh-oh.
It's not hard, I promise. Mm-hmm. You talked a lot about standardization. What kind of rate do you have for exception requests, and do they get out of hand and really gnarly?
Okay, so the exception requests and the changes generally come about on two things. One is Jamf adding a new feature or a new workflow and changing the way we approach things, or the OS is dictating. So we might have some profile scope to a group, but now we need a UAMDM group and that type of thing. So it tends to be just a collaborative discussion around that because the environment has changed, because Jamf has changed, because the OS has changed. And it's just an evolution, really. So fits and starts, it can be a couple in a month because of new OS and new Jamf release, or it could be none for 6 months.
We tend to evaluate the new changes and stuff as well internally, check to see if the workflow, check to see if it works, and then we kind of go through it and go, right, guys, can you deploy that to production instances? So, yeah.
Hey, so I know we've talked about this in the past a little bit. You're using Monkey Rebrand heavily to get your branding on the tools. Are you still manually rolling out new Monkey tools? Are you using Monkey to push Monkey?
We're using Jamf to push Monkey.
Yeah. Do you use Jamf to push Monkey for Monkey updates as well?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Again, it's just the way that we work on this. We've decided that Monkey with the rebrand and that we do there isn't a publicly accessible version, so then that goes through Jamf. But we do like to visit our Jamf deployments quite a bit and look at them and make the changes. So there, as much logging and proactive reporting that we have, there are some things that you just can't see until you go in there. And we might not go into a Jamf deployment for months.
Yeah.
Because if it's ticking over, why would you?
Yeah, no, we're the same way. I was just curious if it had changed since we last talked about it.
Yeah, no, just, again, keep it simple, make it scale. We all like to sleep, so. Anybody else? How warm is the sweater? It's all right. Yeah, it's a nice nondescript colour, my warm sweater here. Yeah.
It's not your usual pink. So.
No.
Magenta. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's magenta, that's, yeah, sorry, yeah. He does look like a traffic warden, though.
So was that of use to you folks? Is that handy? Anything? Yeah? Cool, thank you.
Thank you very much.